As of April 2024, Nigeria's headline inflation rate increased to 33.69% from 33.20% recorded in March 2024. This shows that in comparison to March 2024, the headline inflation rate for April 2024 increased by 0.49 percentage points. In April 2024, the headline inflation rate was 11.47 percentage points higher year-on-year than it was in April 2023. That's 22.22%. This illustrates how the headline inflation rate increased between April 2023 and April 2024. In addition, April 2024's headline inflation rate was 2.29% on a month-over-month basis, 0.73% less than March 2024's rate of 3.02%. This suggests that the average price level in April 2024 will increase at a slower rate than it did in March 2024. Now with me to discuss this, Senior Economist at Stears Incorporated, Dumebi Oluwole. Thank you very much, Dumebi, for joining us. Many analysts anticipated nothing less than 34%. But let me get your reaction to the 33.69% rate and what your expectations was. I think your device is muted. Please double check.
Yes, sorry about that.
Yes, fine, go ahead.
So Stears actually projected 33.91%. So we're pretty close to what the inflation numbers were going to come up at. And we projected these numbers because Stears, for inflation forecast, we have scenarios, and Nigeria's inflation numbers have since come up at our bear case scenarios, and that is the highest inflation rate we're projecting for the year or for the month. So in April, we projected 33.9, and the actual numbers came in at 33.69. Basically, with these numbers, I think most analysts did predict that inflation was going to come in higher, and that was primarily because of the exchange rate movement, lingering, increase in food prices and energy prices, especially the electricity tariffs that were revised upwards. So it was a combination of an increase in food prices and an increase in energy prices that generally pushed the headline inflation rate higher. However, the monthly inflation rate slowed, and to an extent, it does attest to the fact that, or it does attest to the impact of the exchange rate appreciating temporarily in April. So if you remember, between I think mid-March up until mid-April, we saw a steady appreciation of the naira from about 1,400 to around 1,100, and that did have an impact on inflation numbers. The NBS typically, typically collates their prices within the first 2 weeks of the month. So that's one of the reasons why we are seeing the month-on-month inflation numbers actually coming slightly lower. And we saw this decline across all the sub-indices. That's the core inflation numbers, the food inflation numbers, urban inflation numbers, rural inflation numbers. However, inflation risks are still very much prominent and are very elevated in Nigeria, significantly because exchange rate pressures have, come back. The naira has reversed its gains and is significantly depreciating right now, both at the parallel market and at the official market. And we do expect that the exchange rate pass-through effect to commodity prices will become more prominent. We will likely see electricity prices remain high simply because the exchange rate is now a determining factor in the computation of the tariffs. We'll also see diesel prices and petrol prices likely increase, simply because now those markets of diesel prices have actually been deregulated for a long time now. But then again, the petrol market has now been deregulated, and we might likely see an upward revision in prices, except if the NNPC and the federal government, say otherwise. For food prices, the expectation is still the same thing. Imported food prices will remain significantly higher, and this will definitely feed into the overall inflation.
I mean, there is increase, but it is slow, what Nigerians want is actual deceleration. Do you see that happening anytime soon?
Towards the end of, I would say May, up until the beginning of August, we might see a deceleration in the headline inflation rate, and this will be because of base effects. So if you remember last year, May, June, that was when we had the reforms take place, and that was when we saw the significant shock from the removal of fuel subsidy and the exchange rate devaluation, the first exchange rate devaluation. So we might see the headline inflation rate decelerate a little bit for the May and June inflation print. However, the chances of that reflecting in market prices are very slim. And this is because the issues that are significantly impacting commodity prices in the open market are still very prominent. Again, I would say the exchange rate is still, depreciating. So that will continue to feed into commodity prices, and particularly food inflation. Remember that food inflation in Nigeria is not only driven by currency pressures, but also structural issues, right? So, and these structural issues have still not been addressed, and that's one of the reasons why we're seeing food inflation significantly increase or remain significantly high, and we do expect this trend to continue until these issues are addressed. So I'm sorry to be the bearer of not so good news for consumers that are looking forward to significantly declining prices or a steady decline in prices. That would likely not happen anytime soon. And even if the exchange rate does appreciate in the next few weeks, we have the MPC meeting coming up next week, and the expectations are that the central bank will tighten again. So if that somewhat anchors exchange rate expectations and starts causing the exchange rate to appreciate, if the momentum is not sustained for at least 3 months, we will not see a significant decline or a steady decline in commodity prices because of the lag effect. So for developing markets like Nigeria, there's typically a lag effect of about 6 to 12 months for when exchange rate appreciations eventually translates to lower food or lower commodity prices.
The CBN governor has made it clear that the MPC might maintain its tightening policy. Doesn't this bother you, saying that beyond money supply, there are structural issues that contribute to Nigeria's inflation?
Yeah, of course it does. But we have to remember that the monetary policy authorities will only adjust the tools that are at their disposal, right? And right now at the top of that list is interest rate adjustments and ensuring that the transmission mechanism to other interest rates in the economy are also rising in tandem. We've seen the CBN do this, and I do think that they're on the mark with the adjustments that they're making. However, we need to also remember that, like I said before, it's the other structural issues, and that does not rest on the shoulder of the central bank. It does rest on the shoulder of the federal government. And until we see them make substantial moves to address the issues that are significantly affecting food inflation in Nigeria, particularly, we will still see inflationary pressures remain high. And this is because food items in Nigeria's inflation basket food items, they contribute about 51%, or they make about 51% of the items in Nigeria's inflation basket. So if we do not address the lingering structural issues, from insecurity to inadequate storage facilities to post-harvest losses, all of these factors that significantly impede Nigeria's food supply, we will continue to see these issues regarding food inflation.
You certainly are not a bearer of plenty of good news today, but I guess the forecast is heartwarming. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
It's just for the